What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, coming at you late night. I'm having a hard time going to sleep, so I figured, hey, why not get up and talk some college football to pass the time? And maybe a reason why I'm struggling to go to sleep now is because the college football season is over. It is officially the off season. And I don't know, but after Ohio State beat Notre Dame in the national championship and they lifted up the national title trophy, that was the conclusion to the season. But for some reason, it didn't hit me then, but it's now hitting me now, pretty much a week later. Maybe it's because I've been thinking about it a lot, but I've just been so thirsty to watch and talk college football. So on this episode, I want to discuss how Florida State's new philosophy on the transfer portal is going to impact them in 2025. The hype train for Florida is getting crowded. There barely is any place to stand on this thing anymore because there's a lot of optimism about how good the Gators could be in year 4 under Billy Napier. They've been ranked in a bunch of way too early top 25s where I see them coming in as high as number 8 or number 9. There's been a good amount of discussion about them possibly being a playoff team this year, and that's really what I want to dive into, because just how far away is Florida from being a college football playoff contender? Could they be in the playoffs as soon as a few months from now? Or are they still a year away? Miami made some massive changes on defense. They're going through an overhaul on that side of the football. New defensive coordinator, a lot of players in the secondary that they're bringing in from the portal. And of course, I got to give you guys my one of many way too early 2025 CFP predictions. Going to be dropping a lot of these playoff predictions over the course of this offseason. And look, if Curt Cignetti can lead Indiana to the playoffs in his first season as the head coach there, you mean to tell me that Bill Belichick can't do the same thing with North Carolina? Shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching. Make sure that you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon if you're new so you don't miss when we drop new content. Remember, you can find us on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Links down in the description below, and let's dive into it. Live by the transfer portal, die by the transfer portal has been Florida State's mantra under Mike Norvell as the head coach. And after coming off the second worst season in program history, Mike Norvell had no choices but to make changes. Not just to Florida State's coaching staff, because he overhauled his entire coaching staff. You got Gus Malzahn calling the plays on offense, a new defensive coordinator, but those aren't the only changes that Mike Norvell made for this upcoming season. He also has changed Florida State's philosophy towards how they use the transfer portal, how they evaluate and acquire talent out of the portal has changed, because around this same time last season, remember, we were hyping up DJ Uiagalelei, even though I was never high on him. Malik Benson, the wide receiver transfer from Alabama. These were guys that Florida State brought in from the portal because they were all about development. They didn't really care about how much production you had at your previous stop. All they cared about was your potential. Do you have all of the physical and athletic traits to become one of the best at your position? And if you did, they would look at that and say, you know what, come to FSU. We are the place that can develop you. And when you have the mentality of development over proven production, you get the kind of results that you got last season. FSU, if you were to take off the emblem on the side of their helmet and you were to erase the Florida State name, you mean to tell me that you wouldn't have been able to spot the difference between them or FAMU or Bethune-Cookman, because with how bad Florida State looked last year, not only were they one of the worst teams in all of FBS, but they may have been one of the worst teams in all of college football, from Division One to Division Two. I mean, any level, Florida State just didn't look like a good college team. They had guys that were slacking, guys that didn't look like they were going all in, like Patrick Payton. Patrick Payton, for him to have been one of the highest rated players in all of the transfer portal this past cycle, really surprised me. Anytime you try to tell LSU fans that Patrick Payton ain't really that good, they think you're hating. But if you actually watch Florida State play last season, there's no way you could have watched Patrick Payton and thought that this was the guy that everybody was hyping up before the season to be one of the best defensive players in the ACC, because he just was a complete no-show. It looked like he wasn't even trying out there. So the difference in Florida State's old philosophy towards the portal versus their new philosophy now is that Florida State's new transfer portal philosophy is that they're no longer prioritizing potential overproduction. Now they're all about finding players who have been proven starters at their previous spots, like their 3 offensive linemen that they're bringing in. They bring in 2 offensive tackles that combine for a total of 66 starts. You have a center from Wake Forest that started in 22 games. You have 2 experienced wideouts that you're also going to be bringing out of the portal, and Squirrel White from Tennessee and Deuce Robinson from USC. If you're not familiar with Deuce Robinson, go back and rewatch the highlights of the USC versus LSU Week 1 matchup. Remember that wide receiver that had that crazy one-handed catch? Yeah, Deuce Robinson was that guy who did that. So bringing in Thomas Castanelos, I'm not really that high on him just because of how things ended in Boston College. But at the same time, he is a great fit for what Gus Malzahn likes to do schematically, offensively. So the difference in FSU's approach to the portal this season versus last season is that last season they got a bunch of guys that didn't really prove much at the place that they were coming from. This year, you're getting a bunch of guys that not only have they been proven starters, but they also, you can pretty much guarantee that they're going to have a way bigger impact in Florida State winning games this season than last year's portal class. And I feel pretty confident that FSU's new philosophy for how they go about getting guys out of the portal is going to help them bounce back in 2025. Last year, 2-10 is as bad as you can get at a school like FSU. Even if you are a Gene Chizik or Ed Orgeron, you got to be really freaking bad to do that poorly at a school that has so many resources like what Florida State has, which is why with this new portal strategy that they're implementing, it's going to pay off dividends. Because, listen, you don't need to have a portal class of 20, 30, 40 guys like Deion Sanders to have a successful season, to turn around your program, because that's essentially what Mike Norvell has to do this season. He has to quickly rebuild FSU from the ground up, because last year pretty much set this program back 2 years. All of the goodwill that Mike Norvell built his first couple of seasons as FSU's head coach has quickly been ruined by how bad 2024 was. Now it's like you don't even remember that they went undefeated in the regular season, won the ACC championship, and got snubbed anymore. That kind of is a distant memory with how they looked in 2024. You went from asking yourself, okay, is losing to Georgia Tech just a one-on thing? Is Georgia Tech really that good, or are we just that bad? And every single week, the answer wasn't that team is just that better. It's we just suck. So for Mike Norvell this season, I really like what they did in the portal this year. And he also didn't overdo it. He didn't bring in a bunch of receivers and a bunch of corners because they believe that they have recruited at those two positions the best compared to everywhere else. And this portal cycle, they were worried about improving the line of scrimmage on both the D line and the offensive line, and they definitely have done that. And with the receivers that they've recruited and the cornerbacks that they have, they should be able to put together at least a 7, maybe 8 win campaign. And yeah, that probably is going to be a far cry from what you expect out of a program that was a snub away from getting into the Final Four team college football playoffs. For them to just fall off that fast is really shocking. But despite me being a Miami Hurricane fan, I'm still really high on Mike Norvell. I believe that he's done a lot of good stuff in Tallahassee. And I just feel like last year, they made a mistake with their transfer portal approach. And when you live and die by the portal and you have that bad of a portal class and you're not really that good at developing players that you recruit out of high school, it's going to bite you in the ass. And that's what happened to FSU. And now, not only did they change their philosophy with how they use the portal, but it also has made them change their philosophy on how they go about developing the young players on their team. For the portal, it's not there to be used to build a team from scratch every single year. The portal is supposed to help you fill maybe 1 or 2 needs that you have. Let's say that you don't have a good right tackle. You can go find one in the transfer portal. Let's say you also need a decent number 2 corner. You can get that as well. Or if you need some more depth, that's what the portal is for. The portal is really effective when you can balance building your roster through it, getting a bunch of guys who are going to be great one-and-done players. They're going to play for 1 season with your program. Then they're going to be high draft picks in the NFL. You also bring in guys who they might not be one-and-done guys, but, they still have 2 or 3 years left of eligibility. They come in for a year or 2, develop, and then boom, their final season, they become a great player. And then you bring in the guys that you get from high school. You get your 5 and 4-star quarterbacks, you develop them, and then you get some of your other blue chip talent. But if you're a school like Ole Miss and you don't consistently win those recruiting battles for those 5 and 4 stars, you're kind of a tweener, like your roster is mostly comprised of like 4 and 3 stars, then you can use the portal to kind of get some of that blue chip talent that you weren't able to get via the recruiting rankings. So if you can balance the portal well by blending in recruiting along with it, you can build a really stable foundation like what Lane Kiffin has done at Ole Miss. But Mike Norvell's foundation was never stable because with all of these new transfer guys they got, they were never really able to develop anybody that was from home, which I mean, the guys that they recruit from the state of Florida. And it makes sense why Jeremiah Smith went to Ohio State. Why would he stay at home playing for the hometown team in Miami? Why would he play for the Gators or FSU when Ohio State just is a football factory when it comes to preparing guys for the NFL level? Compared to FSU, who I can't recall the last time they developed a recruit that they got out of high school and turned them into a high draft pick, but it's been a very long time. So for Florida State this season, I like the new approach that they've taken towards the transfer portal and the fact that they also want to take time to develop some of the other positions that they know that they're really good at developing based off what they've done with those positions in the past. And if you can develop guys like Johnny Wilson and Jordan Travis and whoever else that Florida State has gotten out of the portal in the last couple of years, I don't understand what's the difference between developing portal guys and players that you get out of high school. But I'm very confident that FSU's new transfer portal philosophy is going to pay off dividends for them in 2025 and help them have a bounce back season. How far away do you guys think Florida is from being a legitimate college football playoff contender? Could we see them be a playoff contender in the next 9-10 months from now? Or are they still a little ways away from being able to compete for a playoff spot this year, entering their 4th season under Billy Napier. Because to me, I don't believe that Florida is a playoff contender this year. I think that they are still at least 1 year away from being in that conversation to where you view them just not as a surefire playoff pick, but you also could see them potentially competing for the SEC. 2026 is the year I really believe that Florida is going to put it all together and they're going to be able to make a big run, because a lot of their team coming into this year is fairly young. You know, the majority of their best players last year were underclassmen. DJ Lagway, true freshman. Jaden Ball, who led the team in rushing yards as a true freshman. You know, Aiden Mizell, he also is pretty young. There are so many talented players on Florida's roster that just don't have enough experience yet for this to be a playoff team. And I get the hype around DJ Lagway. He did an incredible job during his true freshman campaign. He led Florida to back-to-back rank wins for the first time in a few years. You know, it definitely has caused a lot of optimism to be placed into this program again that has been lacking over these last couple of years. And my thing with DJ Lagway isn't that I question if he's going to live up to his potential, because I'm confident DJ Lagway is going to be everything that he was hyped up to be coming out of high school. My problem is how Florida fans expect him to play this season, because it seems like Florida fans expect him to take what they like to call a Tebow leap. Because remember, Tebow and Lagway both were highly touted coming out of high school, and both guys were underestimated when it came to the expectations for how good they could be their second season as a starter. You know, nobody expected Tebow to blow up the way that he did when he fully took over the keys to the Florida offense. And the same thing is kind of being said about DJ Lagway, although, you know, I feel like more people are higher on DJ Lagway going into his second season than what people were when it came to Tim Tebow, just because look at the Heisman odds. You know, DJ Lagway's in the top 10. Everybody's talking about Florida from a national standpoint because of, you know, the optimism people have about DJ Lagway and where he can take this Florida program. But there still is some questions about DJ Lagway. Is he going to grow more comfortable throwing the football from within the pocket? Is he going to be more accurate? Like, is the jump that we're going to see out of DJ Lagway this year going to be big enough to where he's a Heisman finalist and he has Florida competing for a spot in the playoffs? You know, I really don't know. I see DJ Lagway having a season where he throws for 20 touchdowns. He runs for about 12 or 13. You know, he completes around 63, 64% of his passes. He has a pretty productive season, but I still don't think that he'll be good enough to have Florida competing for a playoff spot with, once again, having another gruesome schedule. I mean, after you play LIU and USF, it's tough sledding from there. You got to open SEC play on the road in Death Valley against LSU. You're playing your rival Miami on the road. You got Texas off a bye. Then you got to go on the road to play in College Station against Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss on the road, Tennessee. This year's schedule for Florida may be even more difficult than what it was for them in 2024. And then who the hell is going to be the new defensive coordinator? Because Florida seems to be dragging their feet with that. Austin Armstrong, he leaves to take the Houston defensive coordinator job, and you still have not found his replacement. So there's a lot of questions for Florida that we're not going to get answers to when it comes to them being able to compete for a playoff spot until this season kicks off. I'm not denying that DJ Lagway is going to be good this season, but I doubt that he's going to take this big leap that Florida fans believe he will to what Tim Tebow did. I just think that's a little bit unrealistic. And I feel like the pressure that Florida fans are putting on DJ Lagway, it's a little bit too much. Because when you have a quarterback like DJ Lagway that has these high expectations and he doesn't play up to them when the season starts, then the fan base starts to turn on him. And, some fans have to realize that growth isn't an overnight thing. You just don't go from being a true freshman that was kind of looking like a chicken with his head cut off to all of a sudden you're the best quarterback in college football in this short of a span. Look at Dylan Raiola and Nico Iamaleava. They started out their true freshman seasons great, and then look how it ended. They kind of went a little bit cold. So when you have somebody like DJ Lagway that has all this potential, sometimes fans jump the gun and they think so much about how good they'll make their team if they just reach their potential right away, when they kind of forget that it's a process. And normally it takes about a player's third season of college ball for it to finally all come together as a quarterback. Lenore Sellers had a great season last year, and he was a redshirt freshman. He actually sat a year behind Spencer Rattler, and even then, his first 2 months last season were really ugly, to say the least. He did not look that impressive, and at one point, South Carolina fans wanted him benched. So I just don't see Florida being a playoff contender this year. I think that they're going to make their run at competing for the SEC championship and the playoffs in 2026. They just need one more year for their underclassmen to get more experience, get a little bigger and stronger. And when you go into 2026, you're walking into probably one of the three most talented rosters in the SEC with how well Billy Napier has recruited and developed. So with how well these underclassmen played last year with another good season, when we go into 2026 and half or if not more of this roster is comprised of juniors and seniors, Florida's going to be a really dangerous team, but they're just one more year away from being able to make that big run, from being able to say the Florida Gators are truly back. Last year, Miami wasted the greatest quarterback to ever put on the Hurricanes jersey, that being Cam Ward. In his lone season with the program, he shattered all of Miami's single-season passing records. He was a Heisman finalist, and Miami had nothing to show for how good of a quarterback Cam Ward was, but making it to the Pop-Tart Bowl and missing out on the opportunity to be in the 12-team college football playoffs its first year in existence. And a large reason why Miami wasted the generational talents of Cam Ward was because of how god-awful the defense was. The defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. They sucked against the run. The secondary was burnt toast. They were getting cooked every single play. I mean, Kyle McCord was just absolutely embarrassing Miami secondary. At halftime, I felt like the defensive coordinator should have got the boot. It took Mario Cristobal too long to kick Lance Guidry to the curb. When you have a defense that bad and you're struggling to win games against teams like Cal and Virginia Tech, you got problems, and you shouldn't wait to get rid of them. But this offseason, at least after the early winter portal cycle, Mario Cristobal has completely overhauled and retooled this defense. The defensive line wasn't that bad. It was pretty good at times. It probably was the strength of this unit. But outside of the D line, the linebackers weren't good, but the secondary was god-awful. Miami might have had the worst secondary in all of college football last year. Outside of that true freshman stud they had at corner, they had nobody else that was good. And in this portal cycle, Mario Cristobal went out and landed 4 of the top 20 best cornerbacks out of the portal. You have Xavier Lucas, who transfers from Wisconsin in a very controversial fashion, but he was the second-ranked quarterback in the portal from this cycle. Last year, he had 2 pass breakups and the interception. And what I like about Xavier Lucas the most is that not only does he have great size, but he's only a sophomore this year. So he has a few more years left before he can declare for the NFL draft. So that's a positive for Miami. You're going to get somebody that isn't just here for 1 year. He's going to be able to give you elite, high-level cornerback play for at least 2 seasons. And he's not the only underclassman that Miami acquired via the portal. You also have Emmanuel Canarli from Arizona. He was the 8th ranked cornerback from this portal cycle. He had 5 pass deflections. He also is able to play, a little bit in the slot as well. Now, my favorite addition that Miami made in the portal when it came to the secondary was Michigan State cornerback Charles Brantley. So he was the 11th ranked cornerback in the portal. He had 3 interceptions, 7 pass deflections. He was one of the best cornerbacks in the Big Ten, in my opinion, in 2024. So for Miami to get him was a huge steal. Now, he doesn't have the youth that Xavier Lucas and Emmanuel Carnley have, but, you got 3, 4, maybe 5 quality corners. So you have good depth, and you also have good quality starters as well. So, I mean, for Miami to go as hard as what they have in the portal and to have a secondary this good is nothing short of outstanding. If this defense isn't at least a top 20 or a top 15 unit, then Miami might have to fire their new defensive coordinator, who is Corey Heatherman. Now, Corey Heatherman, he comes from Minnesota. And the Gophers had a great defense last year under Corey Heatherman. They were 10th in points per game allowed. They were 6th in yards per game allowed. They had a really good run defense. They were top 25 against the run. And they also were 11th in passing yards per game allowed. And, the improvement when it comes to the pass defense is what has me so excited about this hiring of Corey Heatherman. Because, listen, it's a passing game now. If you can't stop the pass, then you pretty much have no chance to win. If a team can run the ball against you for about 200-300 yards, cool. But, I'd rather a team be able to run it on me than a team be able to just throw it at will against me. Because if you can throw it at will, then that means you can probably put 30, 40 points up on my defense. If you can run it at will, yeah, you may go for 200-300 yards, but you're going to take a lot of time off the clock, and you're not going to be able to score as many points if my offense is at least halfway competent. So with Corey Heatherman now, pairing him up with Shannon Dawson, Miami quietly has one of the better coaching staffs in college football when you just look at their 2 coordinators. And what Corey Heatherman is going to do to this defense is that he's not just going to improve the overall play of it, but he's also going to make this a defense that can actually be trusted to win games. This isn't going to be a year where Miami fans have to cross their fingers and pray to God that the offense gets the ball last, because they know if it's the defense that's on the field last and they have to step up and get the win, they're not going to come through. But this season, though, you actually have a defense that you can trust. And with how well Mario Cristobal has recruited on the line of scrimmage, when it comes to the defensive line, the linebackers, now that you improve the defensive back room, I think Miami now has a complete defense. Wouldn't y'all agree? I mean, there should be at least 2-3 guys on that defensive line that step up and have really good seasons getting after the quarterback. And the linebacker play should improve as well. Just when you have a new defensive coordinator, I don't think that it was all the players' fault why the defense was bad. Yeah, you can say that some guys aren't good enough to be playing out of school like Miami, or at least starting. But when you have a good coach, he can put your players that may not be as talented in the best position to get the most out of them. And he can do a better job at finding roles for their skill set than somebody like Lance Guidry, who, even if you do give him a halfway good defense, he doesn't know how to put all of these talented players in positions to make plays. And that's what Miami's new defensive coordinator is going to do a better job of compared to Lance Guidry. Corey Heatherman is going to do a way better job of maximizing all of the talented players that Miami gets out of recruiting in high school. And Lance Guidry, you know, he was a really likable guy, but you know, he just didn't really know how to get the most out of the personnel. When you have a guy that's such an elite recruiter like Mario Cristobal is, it's no excuse why your defense should look that bad. You know, the better the coach, the more they can do with less. And Corey Heatherman at a school like Minnesota that doesn't have the players on defense anywhere as good as what Miami does, you know, all he needs is the talent for him to have one of the best defenses in college football. For Minnesota defensively to be as good as what they were last year under Heatherman, in spite of not having all of these 4- and 5-star blue chips that Miami has stacked across the roster, is really impressive because good coaches do more with less. Coaches, especially coordinators, are like chess players. You know, everybody has the same pieces. Everybody has the same 11 guys, per se, but not everybody has the same access to the same level of talent that every other coach does. You know, a guy like Corey Heatherman, who is able to do more compared to Lance Guidry, who did less with more, shows you why this is going to be a great hiring and why Miami's defense is going to be so vastly improved this year than what it was last season. And if Miami's offense, it doesn't need to be as good as what it was with Cam Ward, but if it can at least be 80% of what it was with Cam Ward at the helm at QB, then, you know, with an improved defense and competent quarterback play out of Carson back, as long as Mario Cristobal doesn't fuck up anything with his awful clock management and having Miami playing down to teams they're favored to beat, Miami definitely should be in an ACC championship or the college football playoffs at the worst. You know, I'm not going to say Miami needs to win the ACC title, but they at least need to make it to the playoffs, because with the playoffs expanding to 12 teams, with how easy it is to recruit at Miami, and for as much goodwill that Mario Cristobal has built as the head coach of the Miami Hurricanes over these last couple of years, you know, we got to start seeing some big time results. Miami is not a program that has been built upon playing in the Pop-Tart Bowl. You know, when you think of the U, when you think of Miami Hurricanes football, you think of Ray Lewis, Sean Taylor, Andre Johnson, Jimmy Johnson, national championships, playing in the big games. Having an improved defense is going to help Mario Cristobal get one step closer to his goal of being able to revive Miami football. So I'm really excited about the overhaul that Mario Cristobal has done to this defense, improving the secondary, bringing in a new defensive coordinator. I think a lot of these moves are going to work out perfectly for the Hurricanes, and we should see an improved defense as a result of that. This is going to be the first of many way too early CFP bracket predictions that I'm going to be doing over the course of this offseason. I plan on dropping 4 of these. The final one I do is going to be a week before the season kicks off. So the same teams that you see in this one may not be the same ones that you see in my finalized version. I'm going to give you guys who the hell I have getting in and who is my pick to win a national championship. So I got to give you guys a brief explanation for why I have all of these teams and where I have them seated where they are, starting with Washington at 12. A lot of y'all are really sleeping on Jedd Fisch. This dude is a fantastic head coach. You saw how badly Arizona fell off with him taking this Washington job. I mean, Noah Fafita didn't even look recognizable. And Washington overachieved year one under Jedd Fisch because they returned pretty much no production from the team that went to the national championship and lost to Michigan. Those players either went to the draft or they entered the transfer portal. So Jed Fish taking this job so late after the national championship, he wasn't able to use the transfer portal like how he would like to. Now with an off season of him being able to dabble in the portal, Washington already has a pretty good team. They have a good amount of returning production coming back, and you mix that in with the guys Jed Fish is bringing from the portal. Plus, he has a really good quarterback taking over for Will Rogers. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's a baller. He reminds me a lot of Jaden Daniels, fantastic runner. And when he was in for the brief action and replace of Will Rogers, he was freaking fantastic throwing the ball. He only had one interception to, I believe, 8 passing touchdowns. And he easily is going to be one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten when this year is all said and done. Washington is going to be a really underrated team this year. Look out for them in the Big Ten. I have Oklahoma getting in with the 11th seed. And I know a lot of y'all are probably going to be like, you're crazy for putting in Oklahoma with how bad they were last year. And look, I totally understand the questions that people have about Brent Venables when it comes to how good of a coach is he. We know he knows defense. The defense looked good, but the offense was atrocious. Well, they addressed that in 2 ways. First, they hired Washington State's offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. And then they got the quarterback that replaced Cam Ward and John Mateer, who was, in my opinion, the best player in the transfer portal. He reminds me a lot of Bo Nix. They have a lot of similarities, but he has a way stronger arm, and he's a little bit more elusive as a runner as what Bo Nix is. And they got some really good receivers. Deion Burks returns. Their offensive line should be improved as well. Oklahoma, their season was over before it even started last year. That's what some of y'all don't bring up when you talk down on Oklahoma, but when they came out of fall camp, they were down like all of their starting receivers. They didn't even have all of their starters on the offensive line healthy, and that position was already in flux. So, I mean, listen, with John Mateer at quarterback now, he's going to have a Cam Ward impact on Oklahoma, and you know they're going to have a good defense. So, I expect this to be a 10, maybe 11 win team if everything goes right for them. UNLV is the easy pick for the G5 team that gets an auto bid in if they win their conference championship, because Dan Mullen is now the head coach at UNLV. He replaces Barry Odom. Dan Mullen is the best head coach that Florida has had since Urban Meyer stepped down. And, you know, he got fired because of some interest that he had and maybe leaving for the NFL, and with him being always on the verge of wanting an NFL job, some of his best coaches didn't stay because he didn't give them enough confirmation or enough assurance that he will remain in Florida, and nobody wants to be left in the dark, but he did a fantastic job at Florida. Wasn't the greatest recruiter, but when it came to on the field standpoint, he produced 2 first-round picks. He got Kyle Trask drafted. And then even before that, he was winning at Mississippi State. In the first ever released college football playoff rankings, Mississippi State was number 1. He was dominating with Dak Prescott at one point. Dan Mullen is a really good coach, and that UNLV, a team that has a pretty committed NIL backing, you know, Dan Mullen's going to be able to have a lot of success in the Mountain West Conference that is wide open right now. Outside of Boise State, it really is nobody else. Maybe Colorado State, they could be pretty decent this year, but with how the Mountain West looks, UNLV should easily win this conference this season, and they should also be undefeated because they don't play a pretty tough schedule out of conference. So I see them getting in that 10 as an undefeated G5, the only G5 that would get in this year. UNC, I have them seeded 9th. And North Carolina could be what Indiana was last season under Kurt Cignetti. Look, North Carolina has brought in some pretty solid recruiting classes. Not Alabama, Georgia, Texas level, but relative to the rest of the ACC, they have a top 3 roster in that conference. And with what they're bringing in out of the transfer portal, the 16th rated class, they're going to have enough talent that with Bill Belichick's coaching experience, they're going to be able to take advantage of a pretty easy path to the ACC title game. Your only 3 toughest games are Clemson and on the road against NC State, who's coming off a down year, and then you play Syracuse, who has to replace Kyle McCord. So there's a really realistic situation where we're looking at maybe a one-loss UNC team playing an undefeated Clemson team, or maybe they're undefeated if they're able to beat Clemson because they do play them at home. So maybe we're looking at a North Carolina team that gets in with maybe 1 or 2 losses max. Bill Belichick gives this team an elevated advantage with how well he's going to have them in situations late in games, and the fact that they're going to be a team that now can play some respectable defense. They won't be giving up 70 against JMU. I like UNC to get in. Penn State is at 8. They return a lot of good players from their playoff run this year. Drew Aller should improve with the wide receiver additions that they're bringing in from the portal. I like Penn State to probably be like the second or third best team in the Big Ten this year, but they definitely are going to be more powered up than what they were previously in 2024. 7, I have Alabama getting in their second season under Kalen DeBoer. Look, y'all may not believe in Kalen DeBoer, but I do still, because the man's a winner. Everywhere he goes, he wins. Last season wasn't just the worst season Bama has had since the first year of the Nick Saban era. It also was Kalen DeBoer's worst year as a head coach, and I put all the blame on Jalen Milroe. He just wasn't good. When you can't throw the football and you're just a run-first quarterback in a system that just produced a Heisman finalist and a top 10 pick, you're the problem. When Kalen DeBoer can win everywhere, but he gets to Bama, he's struggling, I give him somewhat of a pass. Alabama still has one of the best rosters in college football. They still do have pretty good depth with how well they have recruited. They also bring in some few key transfers as well. Yeah, nobody knows what they're going to do at quarterback, but nobody knows how good Ohio State's quarterback situation is going to be. Nobody knows how good a lot of the teams people have projected in the top 10 are going to be when it comes to their quarterback situations. We got a lot of new faces. People got Georgia getting in, and how good is Gunnar Stockton? We don't know. But I like Alabama to get in, man. Y'all kind of sleeping on Kalen DeBoer. Yeah, he lost the teams he had no business losing to, but Alabama showed up against all but one team that was ranked last season, and that was Tennessee. Kalen DeBoer is a winner. In his last year, he beat Steve Sarkisian in the semifinals. He's beaten Kirby Smart. He's beaten Brian Kelly. He's beaten some of the best coaches in the SEC. So I like Alabama to shake back and get into the playoffs this year. At 6-5, I got Oregon and Georgia. Georgia had a down year for their standards just because they didn't have a lot of depth, and they were just in survival mode for all of last year. And coming into this year, they should be right back to what they were before 2024. They should have good depth. They got better wide receivers. They got some young receivers that they didn't really play last year that could break out. And I believe in Stockton at quarterback. The defense is going to be good as well. That's Kirby Smart's expertise. Oregon, same way. I don't know how much production they have coming back from last year's team, but it really doesn't matter. They just buy their squad out of the portal. They get all of the best players out of high school. They buy all of the best players out of the portal. Hell, they're buying some of them off lower teams. They're buying like some of the best players off some of the best G5 schools. So Oregon, it really doesn't matter who they have coming back. But with the quarterback situation, you got Dante Moore. Just how good is he going to be? I expect them to at least be, 70% of what Dylan Gabriel is, because he does get the boost from their offensive coordinator, Will Stein. And defensively, I still don't know about them, because their defense against Ohio State, the 2 times they played, was a major disappointment. And even when they played Penn State in the Big Ten championship, the defense could have been better. But when it comes to the auto biz, these are the teams that get a first round bye because they win their conference. I got Iowa State winning the Big 12. Iowa State returns a lot of last year's team. And a large reason why they kind of started to struggle during the middle portion of the season was because they had a lot of injuries. But, when they played Arizona State in the Big 12, they got their ass kicked in the Big 12 title game. But, they did beat Miami in the Tart Bowl for what that's worth. And, Matt Campbell is one of the best program builders in the sport. And Iowa State doesn't recruit at an insanely high level. So, normally when they return so much production like they do this year, they have a great season because, it takes them 1, 2, 3 years to rebuild from a great season. So this is the year that we see Iowa State make a run and they get into the playoffs. Clemson, I have them winning the ACC. I think that they will go 1-1 with North Carolina. I expect them to play North Carolina twice. They played them on the road in the regular season in Chapel Hill, and they have to play them again if they see them in the ACC championship game, which I think is more than likely. But Clemson, at worst, probably has one loss. I expect them to beat LSU when they play them early during this season. This is the best team that Dabo Swinney has had since they last were in the playoffs. Well, before the playoffs expanded to 12. They have a lot of guys who contributed, who were underclassmen, who are upperclassmen now. And that's why Dabo Swinney, after the game, he was in high spirits. He said, this year was just, foreshadowing of what's to come. Good receivers, Cade Klubnik. Oh, my goodness. He was throwing seeds against Texas. Cade Klubnik has finally arrived, people. And you have the best coaching staff in America with you just hiring Tom Allen as your defensive coordinator, and you have Garrett Riley in year 3 as the offensive coordinator. Clemson is going to be a monster this year. And I got Texas and Ohio State at 1 and 2 because, they may be two of the richest programs in college football with the way that they just find ways to get all these great players out of high school, great players in the transfer portal. Nobody really cares about Ohio State's quarterback situation. Somebody's destined to be good. And, with how they recruit and get guys out of the portal, they're just going to reload. They constantly put guys into the NFL. I'm not worried about them losing Jack Sawyer when you return Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, the two best players in college football. And then for Texas, you got Arch Manning. You're winning the SEC championship. You are. Just like Ohio State, you have a lot of money invested into your team. You recruit phenomenally. Use the transfer portal phenomenally. This is the year that maybe Steve Sarkisian gets over the hump, but this is just my quick, explanation for why I have all these teams and why they are seeded where they're seeded. So now I'm going to give you guys my predictions round by round. In the first round, when it comes to the matchups, we got Washington taking on Georgia, Oklahoma versus Oregon, North Carolina on the road, and Happy Valley against Penn State, and UNLV has to travel to Tuscaloosa. I have Georgia taking down Washington. It's hard to win in Athens, and plus, Georgia just has a great team, just too much for Washington to handle. Give me North Carolina over Penn State. Yeah, I know it's hard to win in Happy Valley, but you really trust James Franklin to lead Penn State to a playoff win over Bill Belichick? Do you know how insane that is? Yeah, I'm good. Give me North Carolina in that one. I just like the coaching advantage just with them having Bill Belichick. Oklahoma, Oregon. I like Oregon. Like, for Oklahoma to get to this point, it shows that John Mateer probably was a Heisman finalist. He definitely was at the Heisman ceremony in New York, and the defense played exceptionally well. It's just that Oregon, they just get better and better every year. The bankroll continues to get bigger. They should be able to take care of Oklahoma, especially with this being played at home at Autzen. And, of course, Alabama's going to take care of UNLV just because of the talent discrepancy and the home field advantage. Quarterfinals. Iowa State versus Georgia. We got UNC versus Texas. We got Bill Belichick versus Arch Manning. Remember the rumors about when Bill Belichick first took this job, Arch Manning could go to Chapel Hill? I don't know if them were rumors or just internet created speculation, but we got Clemson versus Oregon and Ohio State versus Alabama. I'm taking Georgia over Iowa State. I could see Iowa State maybe giving Georgia a little bit of a scare for the first half, and then the second half they just pull away. Just got too much. Give me Texas over North Carolina. Texas with their talent advantage over UNC, and plus you know, like, Steve Sarkisian isn't Bill Belichick, but it's like he might be able to somewhat hold his own in some capacity, because you got to have the Jimmies and Joes in college football to win, even if you are Bill Belichick. And Texas just has too many Jimmies and Joes, where North Carolina probably will have to play damn near perfect to win this game. Texas is advancing to the Final Four. I'm taking Clemson over Oregon. Look, man, Clemson, this is their year that they come back and they show their face to the college football world that we still are a staple when it comes to what a championship program is. Now, you know, they did have a few years when they were out of the playoff picture, but that was more so due to Dabo's stubbornness. He now has embraced the transfer portal. He has embraced name, image, and likeness. He's spending money to get big coaches. Maybe Clemson's you know, NIL backing, and maybe their alumni stepped up. Maybe that was holding them back. Maybe we don't know, but I like Clemson over Oregon in this one. I like the quarterback advantage. I like Clemson's defense against Oregon's offense. Tom Allen is a really aggressive defensive coordinator. He's already seen this Wolstein offense before. He'll be prepared for it. And I like Ohio State over Alabama. I got a lot of respect for Kalen DeBoer. There's a good chance that he could win this game. We could see Alabama in the Final Four this year. But, you know, with everything that Ohio State is bringing in, you know, at quarterback, they got some really good quarterbacks. And this is really a game that could be a coin flip, really. But I give Ohio State the advantage because you do have two of the best players in college football. That can definitely flip a game like this late. Semifinals, Georgia versus Texas, SEC versus SEC. And then for our second semifinals, we got Clemson versus Ohio State, ACC versus Big Ten. I'm going to roll with Texas over Georgia. I can't see Steve Sarkisian losing to Kirby Smart for a third straight time if it happens. I couldn't see him losing to Kirby in the SEC championship, or if they have to play again in the regular season consecutively. Like, he's bound to get one over Kirby. Kirby Smart was in a similar situation with Nick Saban. Eventually, he got one over Nick Saban, even though Nick Saban owns him. So I like Texas to get this one done. Arch Manning is going to be more prepared for the pressures that Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp like to send. Quinn Ewers, the dude was a definition of mid. Texas is going to the national championship. Give me Ohio State over Clemson. Look, I'm drinking and I'm galloping gallons of the Clemson Kool-Aid this year, but not enough to have them beating Ohio State. So we got a rematch of the semifinals matchup from last year between these two teams in the playoffs. The only difference is that this is for the national championship, and they also play each other early during this season as well. So they done played each other 3 times in a year at this point. Crazy what the expansion of the college football playoffs has done. But look, I expect these programs to be two of the best this season. They got two of the best rosters. The quarterback play should be good enough for whoever's going to be behind center at Ohio State. And Arch Manning, man, like, I think he might end up being the one. He definitely should be as good as what the last name would suggest you to believe he will be. And I like Texas to take down Ohio State and win it all this season. So everybody, this is my first of many way too early 2025 CFP bracket predictions that I will be dropping. I'll drop another one during spring. I'll drop another one like in June and July, and then I'll drop my final one a week before the season begins. But I know all of you guys are probably going to agree with those. Sound off in the comment section. In the world where Curt Cignetti took Indiana to the college football playoffs in his first season as the head coach, how does Bill Belichick not instantly make North Carolina a playoff team in his first season? I mean, they have an easy path to the ACC championship game this year because they only have 3 good teams that they play on their schedule. Clemson and on the road against NC State and Syracuse. North Carolina could win anywhere between 10 to 11 games in Bill Belichick's first season. He's bringing in a really good squad. He has the 16th ranked transfer portal class at the moment. They got some really talented offensive linemen coming in. Some good cornerbacks are on the way as well from this portal cycle. And they also retain a lot of talent that they've recruited from the 2 previous recruiting cycles before Mac Brown got fired. So there is enough talent from the previous 2 recruiting classes North Carolina has brought in and what Bill Belichick and Michael Lombardi, his GM, are bringing in from the transfer portal for North Carolina to be the second best team in the ACC this year. And let's say they do make it to the ACC championship game and they lose to Clemson again. Let's say Clemson beats them the first time they play in the regular season and Clemson sweeps them in the ACC championship as well. North Carolina could still get into the playoffs as a 2-loss team because although the Big Ten and the SEC, we already know that they're way better than the ACC is as a whole, the ACC is still good for 2 playoff teams. So we know Clemson is pretty much a bona fide lock to get in this year, but who else from the ACC is going to get in? Everybody's picking Miami. I'm picking North Carolina. With Bill Belichick's great understanding of the game of football and how good he is at having his players ready to play, rather if it's against some of the best teams or some of the worst teams, you don't have to worry about North Carolina, having games where they get a little bit of momentum, everybody's talking about them, and then they fall victim to the rat poison. Bill Belichick is going to do a great job of keeping this team even kill. And I'm going to have a hard time seeing too many ACC quarterbacks having success against a Bill Belichick coach defense. You don't got to worry about North Carolina giving up 70 points to rando schools like James Madison with Bill Belichick being the head coach now. He's going to have that defense playing at an outstanding level, and they easily could have the best defense in the ACC this year. Look, I get that there is an adjustment when it comes to dropping down from the NFL to college football, but it's never been easier to make the transition from the NFL to the collegiate level if you're a guy like Bill Belichick, with NIL, the transfer portal pretty much being the equivalent to NFL free agency, and high school recruiting is somewhat like the NFL draft. Bill Belichick, unlike the majority of coaches, he has been a general manager and a head coach. He knows how to balance his personnel to his liking. He knows also what he's looking for in some of these guys that he's getting out of the portal. He's not like Ole Miss and Oregon just buying up all of the 5- and 4-star portal guys. He's looking for guys that fits what he wants to do, what he wants this North Carolina team to be. And, the quarterback situation, look, I don't think it really matters who Bill Belichick has back there at quarterback. He knows what a competent QB looks like. He had competent quarterback play for the majority of his years with the New England Patriots. And contrary to popular belief, Mac Jones wasn't completely ass during his time in New England. Some of y'all seem to forget, but Mac Jones' rookie season, he almost won Rookie of the Year. If it wasn't for Jamar Chase, he was a Pro Bowler, and he led New England to the playoffs. So Bill Belichick does have a good understanding of the quarterback position, and not just the quarterback position, but all positions. Like Bill Belichick, when you listen to him talk, he's just a football encyclopedia. He knows all kinds of rules, all kinds of different ways to attack offenses and defenses. Like Bill Belichick is going to coach circles around college football this year. For the teams that may have a talent advantage over North Carolina this year, like Clemson, Bill Belichick's coaching is easily going to be able to negate that. The only time Bill Belichick's coaching won't be able to negate an obvious talent gap is once they get to the playoffs. And let's say that, in the first round, they got to play against Georgia or Oregon, Ohio State, or somebody like that. Then they're going to get plastered because, look, it doesn't matter how good, the X's and O's. You still got to have the Jimmies and Joes in college football to win. So there is a ceiling with North Carolina year one under Bill Belichick. But, I really believe that the potential for North Carolina is to be a playoff team. There's no reason why it can't happen. Now, when we were at 4 teams, then okay, it's understandable. But now, with us expanding to 12 teams, this provides a great opportunity for a school like North Carolina that in the past never really would have been in the playoff conversation to all of a sudden be in it with Bill Belichick. The transfer portal allows you to rebuild a team overnight if you know what you're doing. Bill Belichick knows personnel better than probably any other coach in college football right now. So everybody that he's getting out of the transfer portal, I expect to have a major impact on the success that UNC is going to have this upcoming season. Like, the playoffs for North Carolina year one under Bill Belichick is not unrealistic. The schedule is really easy. You're in an easy conference with only one truly elite head coach. North Carolina has all the makings to be this year's Indiana squad. New head coach that's incredibly good, the greatest head coach in the history of football. You bring in a really good portal class, and you retain some of the top talent from your last 2 recruiting cycles. I mean, the stars are perfectly aligned for Bill Belichick to come into college football with a bang.